Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is now playing in theaters. This is supposedly the last film in this nearly 30-year-long franchise, but I really doubt Tom Cruise is going to let it go that easily. Anyways, this franchise is one of my favorite franchises of all time, and quite possibly my favorite action franchise of all time. I said franchise so many times there, but every single film ranges from really good to masterful in my opinion, and yes, that includes the hated on Mission Impossible 2, which I love. This was obviously one of my most anticipated movies of 2025, and yeah, it delivered, at least for me. Look, it's long, it's 10 minutes from being 3 hours long, and I guess it's a little messy and exposition heavy, but fortunately for this film, I seriously could not care less. The action sequences are just as insane as ever, with Tom Cruise risking his life for our entertainment once again, but we knew this. We knew the stunts were going to be some of the coolest things ever put to screen, so where this film really hit for me was in the humanity of it. Why Ethan Hunt does what he does, who Ethan Hunt is as a person, and the love he has for his team. The emotions come rushing through in that aspect of the story for me. This could quite possibly be the most somber and depressing of the MI films, given how it's, probably most likely the last one, and how huge the stakes are compared to, all the other movies. I've heard some people complain that a franchise like this doesn't really fully work with world-shattering stakes, and I completely disagree. Seeing Ethan as the only man that can stop this evil digital anti-god is unbelievably cool and ties it back to how the world actually is today in the real world, obviously. The entire opening scene really sets up just how terrifying the entity really is through voiceovers by a bunch of characters from Dead Reckoning. This movie really does make it seem as if our characters are going up against a god. The first hour or so of this movie feels like a justified attempt at fan service. What I mean by that is the franchise deserves to, call back to a bunch of other films in this franchise and give us a bunch of flashbacks and remind us of everything it's gone through to get to this movie. Not only did I not mind the immense amount of callbacks, I welcome them, because what it essentially is a trip down memory lane, and it hits emotionally and thematically, and it spends an hour reminding you just how cool the series of films is, and then spends the remaining 2 hours showing you how much cooler it can actually get. There are two specific sequences that everybody is talking about, and for good reason, because they're both just some of the most jaw-dropping action scenes of the decade so far, maybe even of the century, I don't know. The first is the incredible, beautifully shot Sevastopol submarine sequence. It looks gorgeous, and it gets you so insanely tensed up as to how Ethan is going to find his way out of this situation. And then you remember this man is practically indestructible, so you want to cheer as loud as humanly possible towards the end of the scene where he finds his way out of it. It's so insane that someone explaining it to you will not do it justice. It is groundbreaking. It's insane. Another absolutely generational sequence, and maybe my favorite scene in the whole movie, is the biplane scene. A scene that's being shown in all parts of the marketing because of just how astonishing it really is. But what you've seen in the trailers and TV spots are nothing compared to how it actually is in the movie. There's so much you just have not seen yet. It's also probably the last action scene in this whole franchise, so it carries that weight. I'm not gonna say anything else because that's a scene that deserves the biggest screen possible. Seeing both of those scenes in Dolby nearly made me throw up, and when I say that, I mean that in the best possible way. Without spoiling anything, I think the ending of this film is really, really satisfying. It doesn't really feel as final as many people would have wanted, which I've heard a lot of people complaining about how the ending isn't really as final as they would have wanted, which, I mean, I guess so, but I like how it's just both a bittersweet ending, that if this is the last movie in the franchise and that it is the last scene in this whole series of films, it's satisfying and it works, but it also leaves the door open for future Mission Impossible installments. You could nitpick this movie, no doubt, and you could say that the pacing is off, that it's way too long, that it's messy, sure. But as someone who adores this franchise, this hit every single note. This was everything to me. I laughed and almost cried, and it just worked. All the messiness, all the imperfections, I really did not care. I'm gonna miss this franchise forever. Tom Cruise is a madman, and this was everything to me, man. I love this movie.